Hey guys, and welcome to Off the Cuff. Now today I want to talk a little bit about Retina screens and multi-resolution images. These are two things that I've struggled with when I left Flash development and I started making games properly. Working with vectors has huge merits, but it wasn't the convention. It's not the convention because devices are still not fast enough, especially HTML5, to deal with vector graphics. I think if you're obviously developing for mobiles and you're doing native, then you can get away with it, but it's still a lot faster using bitmap images. So vector graphics, basically the computer works everything out on the fly. You know, everything is just math curves. You can't do the same effects as you would do with bitmaps. Like the shading is not quite as intricate, not photorealistic is what I'm trying to say. With vectors you get gradients, that sort of thing, but they're a lot simpler looking, more stylized than bitmap graphics. So talking about vectors, if you zoom in on a vector all the way in, it'll be perfect. Okay, it is vector graphics. The computer basically works out, you know, this is the curve, it's always going to be a curve. Bitmap graphics, they come at a set resolution, so whatever the resolution you've chosen for your bitmap graphic, when you zoom in you will start seeing pixels. So that's the difference. Now, this leads nicely into the whole Retina and multi-resolution asset thing. I'm going to try and explain this quickly and in the way that I understood it, because it took me a little while to get how it works. Now, both of the engines that I'm doing tutorials on, Getters Mobile and Panda 2.0, which is an HTML5 engine, both of them utilize Retina and high resolution assets, sorry, multi-resolution assets. Now, the convention for this, I think, started a while back, like with the first, second iPhone, that sort of thing, because there were a lot of devices out there and they could not necessarily all handle the same graphics. So I think the original, I'm pretty sure the original resolution for the iPhone was 320 pixels by 480 pixels. And this is where that standard comes from. This is usually what is used as a base resolution for your standard sized assets. Now, this whole multi-resolution asset thing was a little bit more important back in the day. I think it's becoming a little bit more redundant now, but there are times when it's still important. Let's just say you could now design all your graphics at 1080p, like HD, and you could get away with it on a lot of devices. They would be fast enough to be able to handle the pressure, the amount of graphics, the memory it takes to load the images, that sort of stuff. But let's say you want to put your game eventually on a 4K screen, something big like that. You will definitely, if your eyes start in the future getting used to 4K resolutions, people will be able to tell the difference. So there are times where I still think it is quite an important thing to consider when you're designing your game. So basically what I do for, well, I haven't released my game yet, but what I've been trying to learn how to do, and it's been working well, I've tested it on mobiles and it works nicely, is to design all my base graphics at 480 by 320 with a little bit on the outside. I use a scaling mode where you can see a little bit more of the screen, so I design my backgrounds a little bit bigger to the side and to the top, so you always have, in case the font is a little bit wider or taller, you can always see something, you know, it's never just a black box. And then I also include at2x, at2x, and at4x images. Now these ones are obviously 960 by 640, and the next one up would be, I've got to work this out, 320 by 480, so 960. I'm just going to work this out really quickly. So 1280 Right, so we've got your standard is 320 by 480. Your at 2x would be 640 by 960, and your at 4x would be 1280 by 1920, which is just a little bit higher than HD. HD is 1920 by 1080. Now, obviously, you can swap these numbers around. 320 by 480 would signify that we're working with portrait mode. If you go 480 by 320, that would mean we're working with landscape. Now, it doesn't really matter. You pick one and you just go with it. Those numbers are just basically the resolution that you're working with. So what this means is that if you are working with a phone, like let's say we're working with the latest phone like iPhone X or Galaxy S8 or something along those lines, you will be able to load the highest resolution assets because the screen is big enough. The phone will decide, okay, yeah, this phone, this device can handle those assets, and it will load them. However, if somebody still has an old iPhone, a really cheap Android, etc., etc., the device will not load those assets and therefore not be overloaded, and it will load whatever the appropriate assets for its resolutions are. There is a little bit more that goes into this because if you look at your screen sizes for phones and stuff like that, you get a lot of different numbers. You get things like Retina screen and this and that and whatever. But basically what we're talking about here is the pixel density of the phone. If the phone can handle it, it's got this many pixels across and this many pixels down, this is the resolutions, this is the graphics, those assets will be loaded. Okay, so that is my understanding of it. If I'm wrong in any of these parts, I will make another video fixing up my mistakes, but I'm pretty certain that I understand it correctly. Now, there is a little bit of a hindrance here when it comes to the Retina thing. Retina basically means that, let's say on my MacBook Pro, this screen is something like 2500 pixels by 1440. I could be throwing those numbers around, but basically it's higher than HD. It's maybe 1.5 times HD or something like that. And what happens is that the screen then takes everything and magnifies it. So what happens then is a lot of your stuff ends up looking really blurry and not that pleasing to the eye on a screen, on a Mac screen, unless you have Retina or multi-resolution assets. Okay, so in this case, a Mac would obviously use the 1920 by 1280 resolution, the asset, so it would be the at4X. It also needs the software to be able to support the high DPI screen thingy. And this is where a lot of software goes wrong. They might have these multi-resolution assets, but when you load a game or something on a Retina screen, it still looks blurry. Those assets are there, but it's not utilizing the high DPI, the actual pixel density of the monitor. It still shows it blown up, okay? So it still shows it blurry. What it should be doing is when it is running Retina, so when it is magnifying your screen so everything's not so small and tiny, it should be loading the high resolution assets in the background and showing you those instead, because it should realize and recognize that the screen is high enough pixel density to be able to handle that. Hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. If I get any comments, etc., saying that this is still a little bit hard or people don't quite get what I mean by this, I'm going to try and make another video, maybe with some diagrams, stuff like that, but hopefully it's clear enough for you guys to picture what I'm talking about. I'm just going to do a little drawing, a quick drawing over here. Here we've got your standard, okay? Usually these are not numbered. Then you've got your at 2x, which is that size, okay? And then you've got your at 4x, which would be that size. Now, again, that shows you how much bigger the at 4x assets are compared to the standard resolution. Now, if we were using the standard resolution on the latest phone, on one of those really nice big screens, it would not look so great. So it is still very important to consider there are a lot of devices out there that might not be able to load graphics that are super high resolution. For example, the 1920 1280 resolution I've been talking about, loading it on an old crappy Android is not going to do the game much justice. It will probably crash the device, okay? So you've got to consider these things. So hopefully this was enough of a demonstration to help you guys out in case you're struggling with this. Let me know in the comments if you are still needing a little bit more explanation, and I will do my best to explain it a little bit further. Hope this was fun. I will talk to you guys later.